Welcome to the Hey Boomer podcast, the show that inspires listeners to know they are never too old to set another goal or dream a new dream. Each week we have extraordinary guests, thought leaders, and active, engaged people who share their insights with us. This week, my guest is Thelma Reese. Thelma is an accomplished business professional and teacher, activist, and we talk today about her latest book, How Seniors Are Saving the World, as well as a broad discussion about aging and how our perspectives change, how society changes, how they look at us, and some of the intergenerational work that Thelma is doing. It's a fascinating, inspiring conversation. My name is Wendy Green, and I am your host for Hey Boomer. Hello, Hey Boomer listeners. I wrote a blog a few weeks ago about aging and saying that we all have to age, but we don't have to get old. But in my conversations with Thelma Reese, when I was preparing for this show, we talked about how things do change as we age. And not just physically, but our perspective on things change. The way we choose to expend our energy changes. The way we are perceived in the world changes. And in that blog, I introduced you to the term chronologically gifted. I love that term. And in some societies, elders are seen as wise and gifted, and they are treated with great respect. Our society has chosen to label the different generations. The silent generation, the baby boomers, Gen X, the millennials. And then they focus, or we in our society focus on the differences between those generations. And it exacerbates some of the challenges that we all have working together, particularly in the work world, but sometimes in families as well. How much stronger our solutions would be, and how much more loving and supportive our bonds would be if we could build intergenerational bridges between the different generations, rather than seeing them as different silos. My guest today, Thelma Reese, has worked on this concept for a while. She is still working on it, and we're going to talk some about that. And we're also going to talk about her latest book, How Seniors Are Saving the World. Don't forget that you can find Hey Boomer on most of your favorite podcast channels, on Apple Podcast, on Spotify, on Google Podcasts. And so if you have friends that you think would benefit from this discussion that were not able to join us today live, they can either look for the live recording on the Facebook or LinkedIn or YouTube channels, or they can download the podcast, Hey Boomer, and listen to the recording there. Hi, Ken. And I'm saying hi to Ken because I love it when I see you out there and you all are commenting and become part of our conversation. This is a community of boomers. Hi, David. And we are all part of this conversation. It's not just a community, it's a boomers and beyond, as you will see when we talk to Thelma today. But we are all part of the conversation, and your input makes this podcast and this broadcast so much more interesting and lively. So please feel free to comment and ask questions in the chat box. And with that, I want to bring Thelma on. Hi, Thelma Reese.
Hello, Wendy. And hello, everybody.
Yeah. Hi, Gail. So lucky to have you on the podcast today. Thelma is a true jewel. And let me give you the chronological background of Thelma, and then you'll get to know the beautiful person behind that. So Thelma graduated from Temple University with a Bachelor of Science degree, a Master's of Education, and a Doctorate of Education. She taught many years, beginning in 1954 as a third grade teacher, and then as an adjunct professor at Temple and Arcadia University, finally becoming a professor of English and a director of special programs at the Community College of Philadelphia. But she wasn't done. She retired from teaching, and then she was on the Mayor's Commission on Literacy for the city of Philadelphia. She created the Advisory Council for Hooked on Phonics and was their spokesperson in the 90s. She was a founder of Philadelphia Young Playwrights, chaired the board of Citizens Committee on Public Education in Philadelphia and of Children's Literacy Initiative, and organized the World Symposium on Family Literacy at UNESCO in Paris in 1994. Do you think that Thelma is an activist? Besides all of that, she's co-authored 3 books. Her first book was The New Senior Woman, Reinventing the Years Beyond Midlife. The next one was The New Senior Man, not to leave the men out, Exploring New Horizons and New Opportunities. And the one we're going to talk about today is How Seniors Are Saving the World, Retirement Activism. Retirement Activism to the Rescue. So I'm very excited, Thelma, to have you with us today.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
Thank you. So I've given like the brief, amazing chronological background. Can you give us an idea of what has inspired you to do the work that you've been doing and to get into the authoring of these books?
I think all along the way, it hasn't really been a bunch of conscious decisions. It's been following opportunities, seeing things that I felt like needed to be done and I could do. And I do recognize the fact that I've been extremely fortunate. I think I've only applied for 2 jobs in my life. The first one, when I was young and got out of Temple as a young teacher, and I taught for a few years, a couple of years really, till my own children were born. And then again, when they were in school and I had a little time on my hands, and following what seemed to be interesting them, I worked on various things in education, and that I always followed my curiosity, I think. That's why I went back to graduate school. And that's why if I learned more about literacy, that led to the Mayor's Commission calling and asking me to run the Mayor's Commission on Literacy. So all along, there have just been things that seem to open. And I think if you are open yourself to what's there, you find a way to step into things. They're good.
I think that's so true. If you are aware of the possibilities, the doors do seem to appear. So you retired, and then you retired again, and then you decided to write books.
Yes, I think the late Bobby Fleischer and I were both a little bored, I suppose, in our 70s. We had both been teaching so much, and we were still really curious and interested in and looking around and looking really for role models. We realized that there weren't any, or at least not many that we could see. We were not aware until we started to look very seriously into the topic, and we learned that just a short time ago, the demographic was changing so rapidly that now there were many, many more of us than there had ever been, of us older women. We were both in our 70s. And my mother was a great role model in life, in the way she lived and in her character and personality. But the opportunities that were there for us were not there for her, although she had always worked. And we saw that the change was so rapid that who were the role models? Not famous people, but we looked around and we saw they were among us and that we were being role models for younger women too. And that's why we decided to write the book about the new senior woman. And it was fascinating to find out how different our lives were from our mothers and our grandmothers' lives. There was a tremendous change. And one of the changes that you and I have talked about in the past, Wendy, together is that when we decided to write the book, our grown daughters all said, "Why don't you have a blog?" And that was 10 years ago. And our answer was 10 years ago, "What's a blog?" No one would say that today. And it's only been 10 years. So not only has there been change, but the pace of change has changed so dramatically. It's going so fast.
It is. And since you mentioned the blog, I want to put it up here. It's called elderchicks.com. And it was great how you came up with that name. Do you want to share that story?
Well, I really just woke up with it one day and I was and we started it with that name. And my granddaughter, who was then only 12, created the logo, which is brilliant. And you'll see it if you go on www.elderchicks.com. And I was chairing a group for the district attorney's office in Philadelphia then. We were meeting miscreants from the school district who, rather than be arrested, could come before us, and we would help them. And I would pick up a man who was in my group on the way to the police station every month for our meeting. And when I picked him up after we started, I said, "By the way, did you get my email about my new blog?" He said, "What email?" I said, "Well, I started a blog. My partner and I have started a blog called Elder Chicks, and I sent it to you." And he said, "Oh, was that from you?" I was afraid to open it. I thought it must be porn.
So there you go. Elder Chicks is not a pornographic site.
We would have had, I think, an entirely different audience over the past 10 years. And who knows, it might be very interesting, but we have a copyright on the name, so you can't do that.
And it's a fun blog, and it's not just, Thelma writing or people, it's everybody's contributing. So you can write and comment and get involved in the conversation. So I encourage you all to go.
We've had some very brave and fascinating men who have contributed a lot over the years, too.
Well, they love Elder Chicks, too.
They're evolved.
That's right. So let's talk a little bit about the book, How Seniors Are Saving the World. And not all of the people that you write about in this book have always been activists. Some of them discovered their activism later on. Would you talk about that?
I think that's really one of the fascinating things. I have to say, they are like your children, but this is my favorite book of the three. Not just because it's so current, but because I think we discovered so much about ourselves, BJ Kittredge and I, in doing it, and what we learned about these people. And one of the things we learned is that we keep evolving, we keep changing and growing. And what's so wonderful is to see that in the people who are in the book, not all of whom, as you say, considered themselves activists in any way when they were younger. But what they did evolve into, what they did grow into, was the sense that some of them had always had, that something is wrong and I might be able to help fix it. And there isn't anyone today who isn't seeing things that are wrong and probably finding a way they can contribute to fix it. they are different from regular volunteers.
Hmm.
People in the book isn't about volunteerism. We respect volunteerism. Volunteerism is wonderful. Everybody should volunteer as much as they can. We need every bit of help we can find. However, there's something different about being an activist. It's the motivation, it's the sense of fulfillment. It's a win win where you're doing something that really matters to you, where you see a need and you're helping to fill that need, and that helps to fill you. So you're not only filling that need, but you're doing something wonderful for yourself.
And what do you think gave some of these people the courage to say, well, I see the problem,
Yeah,
but so many of us see the problem and then we step back and go, well, but I'm sure somebody else will address that.
that's true. And even among these people, there are people who didn't consciously begin to say, I see this, but they might join an organization because it seems interesting, and they might get more and more involved until it becomes a real cause for them. Some of them did start. The impetus can be anything from, in the case of a woman who started what has become an international organization, she did it in commemorating the life of a son she lost when he was only in his early 20s and had just finished medical school.
Mhm.
It's a very moving story, but the way he died in a traffic accident in Turkey was the impetus for her to start this road safety program that still goes on internationally. She got the Turkish embassy involved in Washington. This is years ago. She was still teaching.
Hmm.
Her husband was still working. And yet she found a way to channel her grief that really created something very beautiful in his memory. And other people have all kinds of reasons. It can come out of some spiritual sense or an extension of one's professional life or just or an illness in the family.
Some of it came out because, like you said, they've been involved in something else, so not a tragedy,
Yeah,
or they were involved in like prison work or
exactly,
tribal things, and
exactly. All kinds of interesting and fascinating, different. Every single one of the 24 people in the book is involved in something else. And what BJ, who just rang so infelicitously, and I felt strongly about is when we read some of these books that are meant to inspire and do, uh, they kind of leave us hanging, though. And here we're introducing people to such an interesting array of other people who range in age from 60 to 95 and are from every ethnic group about just about in this country, um, and all kinds of other um, different categories of citizen. What happens after you get so interested in what this person happens? Well, then at the end of the chapter that tells much in the words of that person, there's this little section called How to Connect.
mhm.
So if you love what Rose was doing on the pipeline and creating a kitchen for people who needed it at Standing Rock, you can see at how to connect, ways
Right.
to connect with her or her cause or what she's doing. Or if you are really inspired by Bob Groves' work with UNESCO, with the United Nations. There's more than a page of how to connect with organizations that he's connected with. So you find inspiration in other people, and then it lights a spark, and you can just go to that site and find out more.
Yeah, so that's a great, is that the way the book is laid out, you do get these inspiring stories. And then there's a whole page of different ways, different resources you can delve
Exactly.
into to help. That was brilliant that you did that. So one of the benefits that you point out that the people in this book, the different activists, are experienced is a journey of self-discovery.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think anytime we take on a challenge, I mean, you certainly have taken on challenges in your lifetime. What's that self-discovery journey like?
It happens every time. And for me, a lot of it has happened with travel, with the kinds of travel that I did where I felt I was connecting with nature in some way, where I went to save the giant clam in Tonga. I had no personal connection to the giant clam, but the idea of going to the South Pacific was very exciting to me. And the idea of the kind of travel where you're not being a tourist, which I also have been a lot, but where you get to work on something has always been very appealing to me. So I've done some of that through Earthwatch.
Mhm.
And I think it opens up parts of the world, parts of yourself that you didn't know were there,
Mm.
and you continue to grow. And now I have to say, I think my airplane travel is pretty much over, except for getting out to the West Coast if we can to visit family. But the journey goes inside more. So you're still engaged in travel, but it's going within.
So we talked about that a little bit, and that leads kind of into this whole idea of the intergenerational work
Yeah,
and how things change personally as we age and how
right.
you're still connecting to the younger people. Would you tell us a little about that project?
Well, I'm very interested in intergenerational relationships and work. People used to joke. I think we may have told the little joke in the new senior woman that one of the reasons that grandparents and grandchildren often become so close is because they have a common enemy. But we don't seriously want to think of it
Yeah.
that way. But sometimes grandchildren do find some things easier to talk about with grandparents than they do with their own
Mhm.
generation. And I think what you said in your introduction was so important that we do in our society think of people in these silos and we label the generations, as you mentioned, um, and everybody takes on this persona of I'm part of this, so I wouldn't quite understand what you're doing as part of that. And it's dangerous.
It is dangerous, Thelma. I mean, as you and I talked, I'm in my late 60s, you're in your late 80s, and we are aware of differences from when we were in our 40s, the way we look at the world, where we interact.
Exactly.
And I
Exactly.
think creating the silos impedes the understanding.
Absolutely. And part of it may come from the fact that we are living so much longer. We have so many more people up at this end of life. And something changes when we get here. Something is changing for me, for instance, that partly the pandemic, but I think it's really the age thing more, which is the awareness of your own mortality.
Mhm.
I mean, mortality can come at any time along the spectrum of aging. But if you do become chronologically gifted, then you can't escape the idea that, you really are aware that there's a finite number coming. If you're lucky and you're still going to be sentient and curious and engaging with other people, and there are more and more older people who do, then we have to find a way to use the resource of these people and also to have them understand what it is that younger people us. And
Yeah.
and I think the more we can erase these boundaries, the better. That's one of the reasons I'm not crazy about the term retirement,
Oh, yeah.
because it also seems to suggest that you've stopped. Well, you may have stopped one thing, but you haven't stopped growing. You haven't stopped changing. And these young people who are uh, facing a really difficult time now, who are getting out of college and who have gotten out, um, even right before this, we knew that the trajectory for them showed that they would probably be changing careers anywhere from 5 to more times in a lifetime. Not like their grandparents who started out in one field and stayed in it.
Mhm.
They'll even change the fields for the most part.
Yeah, not just companies, but
Right, not just
careers.
companies.
Yeah.
Fascinating. So they have to become resilient. They have to, and we have to understand how different life is for them and not have the same expectations that were there when we were their age.
So what do you recognize in yourself? You said maybe some of it was from the pandemic, but you recognized some things besides the facing mortality.
Well, that's a big one.
That's a big one. That is a big
And
one. I don't mean
of course, the pandemic makes it even more vivid, as some of us are still waiting for the vaccine, and I hope everyone who's waiting does get it. Um, and we won't stop masking when we get it. But I think that the more we learn about ourselves, and we begin to recognize our strengths, and
Mm,
we accept that we really are maybe better than we thought, and not it's not a matter of vanity, it's a matter of appreciation. And I think if you appreciate the way that you've grown, you appreciate it in others and you keep doing it, I think that you keep growing.
yeah. Yeah. I think and talking about y'all being role models and
Hmm.
I've always thought of that as well. I mean, your generation, my mother's generation, were more the role models in the women's movement,
Yeah.
and how women's opportunities were opening up. And I think it still was hard in my generation. We still had a lot of things to face that the younger women don't, you know.
Yeah,
And
absolutely. And now we have a woman vice president.
now we have a woman vice president.
Politics aside, the idea that I've seen this in my lifetime, and I remember how my mother never, ever missed an opportunity to vote, ever. I mean, and she lived to be a month short of 97. That was one thing she simply wouldn't do. She remembered the first time to vote. So
Yeah, because she didn't.
yeah, that sense of history is so important in our lives, I think.
It is. So tell me about this program at Temple that you're starting to get involved with.
So I'm one of the seniors involved in a experimental credit course in the psychology department being done for the first time this semester. And there are about 20 junior and senior undergrads in this course in intergenerational psychology and psychology of aging. And we are resources in this group. And they're using this book as one of the readings that they're doing.
Your book,
The book about
Seniors Saving the World.
saving the world. And there are, by the way, there's a whole a discussion section, a very short one, but a pithy one at the end. And they can use that too, and as can book clubs. But I think the interaction between us, 10 of us, and 20 of them, is laying the foundation for further courses in which we will involve a like number of seniors and students. That's on track for next year. And this is going to be sort of a pilot, and it's very exciting. I met with the students last week for the first time, and I really can't wait to be totally involved with them. They are so bright and are asking all the right questions. They want to know for all the right reasons. Mm-hmm. Some of them have older relatives or are actually already working with geriatric patients or as caregivers, or are just curious about the fact that there will be such a change in the demographic to come, that there will be enormous job opportunities eventually in working across generations and with older people. So they know they've got to understand more. And this is so exciting. So we older people can enter the Zoom and listen to the great Professor Giovanetti do her class on Tuesdays, and then on Thursdays, one of us will be in. But all of us can attend. And
that is so
I look forward to Tuesdays and Thursdays until April when it's my turn. I get to be last because I think I'm the oldest. I know I'm the oldest, but I think that's why.
So now you go full circle. You're got back into your teaching mode, which is wonderful.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so I had asked you if you thought you would write another book, but who has time? You're now involved in teaching again at the university level.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't really take much of my time to do this. I don't know if I'm going to write another book or not. Or something that I did in this book was a series of little essays between the chapters that made me think maybe I'll think about a column, if that's possible.
Yeah, and those essays in between were wonderful. They were so spot on. You could use them in your blog.
Well, I could do that.
Yeah, you could do that.
Usually in the blog, I just send a post that is a sort of a prompt, a writing prompt. I did teach writing for a long time. So it's a prompt at the beginning of the month. And then people can respond to that or say anything else they want to. And then it becomes a conversation among the readers of the blog. So
it does, and you don't correct our grammar, so we appreciate that.
Oh, yours doesn't have to be corrected. I won't speak for everybody's. I did teach English, you know.
I know you did. I know. So what was one of the favorite projects that you've worked on? Or have you loved them all?
Yeah, I really have found them all interesting. One of my favorites really was I was the advisor really to Hooked on Phonics for some years. And it started while I was the executive director of the Mayor's Commission on Literacy. And I was quoted in a column in the newspaper as criticizing its attack by just focusing on phonics and teaching reading. And I said it really was about comprehension too.
Mm-hmm.
And the person who created that program called me and said he thought I was mad at him for doing that. And I said, no, I just think you're falling short. So I became his consultant. And it was fascinating because there were such political and commercial among publishers wars about how to teach reading. And it was a very exciting time. I mean, I had to go and testify in some state legislatures. It was very exciting.
Yeah, I bet. This is a great comment.
People could get political about just about anything.
Here's a great comment. He says, Ken says, Dr. Reese is such an inspiration for lifelong learning, and she embodies the adage, lifelong leaders are lifelong learners.
Well, that's nice. Thanks.
Isn't that nice?
Very.
And you are a lifelong learner and teacher.
Oh, thank you. And chronologically gifted.
And chronologically gifted.
CG.
So you must have friends that are just blown away by your comfort level with using the computer and being on Zoom and all the, my technology here. How do you address that?
Some of them are not happy about it.
Why are they not happy about it?
Some of them feel upset with themselves. When you're being a role model to anyone, it's more likely to be to people who are at this stage of life. I'm only talking now that I'm 87. They don't necessarily want to hear about that because they too are doing their own, probably what some psychiatrists would refer to as a life review.
Mm-hmm.
And feeling I should have learned to do that. So they make them upset.
So do you think there's a good way to address that? I'm trying to, with this platform and with other things I'm trying to do, reach out to take away that fear and that feeling that I can't do it.
Yeah.
How would you address that?
Well, I think if they want to know more about technology, that's the perfect way, of course, to engage with the younger generation. Mm-hmm. Because even 20 years younger, even 15 years younger, people have already become accustomed to what we definitely didn't grow up with.
Right.
Which still is really difficult for me in many ways. I mean, aspects of it are easy, and it enabled us to do the books comfortably with each other. Writing with each other across computers is just a marvel. Mm-hmm. But not everybody wants to. I think what they have to think about with themselves is, what is it I want to do and feel? I don't have to do it like anyone else or be like anyone else or care about what they're doing. I have to care about what speaks to me now and what I need and what is my inner journey about, and know that it's of real value to me. That's who I have to learn to live with when I get to be in my 80s. Yeah. I have to learn to live with me and not with anybody else.
Yeah. So Kathy says, great advice. If you want to take away the fear of doing something like in the area of technology, connect with and work with people in the younger generation, reverse mentoring.
Yeah, and they're all so good at it. I mean, because it's natural for them. They've grown up with it, and they love teaching older people.
And I just posted or shared a post on LinkedIn today about the digital divide, where seniors have to go online now to sign up for their COVID vaccine. And
Yeah,
many of them are having a real struggle with that, or don't even have the internet.
exactly. And I'm suggesting I have a few contemporaries who don't use it very much, or I've suggested start with an iPad. It's easier. It's
Mhm.
not as frightening, maybe, to start with something that small, and it will be a great source of information and amusement and enjoyment for you too. I mean, that we should have Google is the greatest gift in the world. That you can look up anything. When I can't, now that I can't travel, I mean, there's a place on my computer every day that I'm looking over. So I think that, of course, people who live in any kind of assisted living situation are helped with that.
Right,
But if you know older people who are on their own,
right.
and you can possibly offer, can I come in and help you? And especially with this COVID vaccination program, it's very complicated in some places.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Thelma, I always like to end my interviews with a quote from C.S. Lewis. And he said,
Yeah.
"We are never too old to set another goal or dream a new dream." So at 87, you are not too old to still be dreaming. What are you dreaming about for the next 6 to 9 months?
I would say uh, definitely getting to 88.
I'm dreaming for that too for you, Thelma.
and and doing it with the kind of acceptance and appreciation for the time that I'm in, for the time that I am living, and the opportunities that may come.
Yeah. Well, you are bringing so much to the world just through what you do and how you show up and the role model that you are. So I thank you for that.
I thank you.
Yeah. Some nice comments here. Elizabeth says she's inspired to know that I might have many more years to make a difference. Looking forward to reading your book.
Well, wonderful. Thanks,
Yeah.
Elizabeth.
Ken says, Dr. Reese is so inspirational. I want to be like her when I grow up.
You will. You'll be like you. It'll be even better.
That's right.
A sense of humor.
Be the best you can be, right?
Exactly. There's only one of you.
There's only one of you. Let me just share your sites. I shared Elder Chicks. There's also a site that Thelma
Yes.
has called senioractivism.com.
Yeah, that one really has a lot of articles and interviews if you want to look at them.
Okay. And you can certainly find her book on Amazon or Barnes and Noble or any of those sites. So I have a completely different topic we're talking about next week. My guest next week is Dina Myler, and she is the founder of something called Everyday Vegan. It's a lifestyle website whose goal is to provide easy recipes and tips for people who would like to live a vegan lifestyle.
I will tell my daughter who's a vegan.
Oh, good. Well, I'm not, but she was so easy to talk to when I first met her, and her real mission is to just make it easy. Some people like myself think, "Oh my gosh, how would I even do that?" So I think it will be an interesting conversation, and we always like to learn. This Hey Boomer community is a learning community, so I'm excited about that.
Wonderful.
Yeah. So thank you for joining us today, and thank you for Thelma's time. And let's continue to meet weekly, to learn, to dream, to grow, and to build this community. I am so grateful for all of you. My name is Wendy Green, and this has been Hey Boomer.